Welcome back to Music Theory Logic. My name's Andrew. I also make music under the alias D.R.U. You may have seen some of my other breakdowns about releases. I try to do this every time I put out a new song, and we had one come out today, so I thought it would be pertinent to do a little video of the session. Unfortunately, this song, this was a collaboration with another artist named Pretty Bye Bye out of Luxembourg, and we feature vocalist Preston Dill, who I work with a lot, and I have on a lot of my tracks. Now, unfortunately, we lost a lot of the session, but we were able to salvage things and record a vocal, and it was a long process. But let's go ahead into the session. Like I said, unfortunately, we lost a lot of the MIDI stuff, the sound design, but I have this session where I did the vocal production, and I do a lot of different techniques that I think will be somewhat helpful to producers out there. So without further ado, I'm going to play the track. This is the edit that became our final edit, so this is what you'll hear on Spotify. If you like this track, you would help us out a ton. Help me out by subscribing to the YouTube channel, and you'd help all of us artists out by streaming this, adding it to your playlist, putting it in videos, whatever. Thank you. Without further ado, here is The Power of Bliss featuring Preston Dill by Pretty Bye Bye and yours truly, D.R.U. Cool. So hopefully you enjoyed that. We had a lot of fun making it. It took us probably like 6 months of sending tracks back and forth. Sounds very different than the original idea did. And once again, due to computer failure, we lost the main session. So shout out to Pretty Bye Bye. I hope he's figured out his computer situation. That was his session that crashed. It's always sad when that happened. Remember to back up your files. It's super important. I'm running like 6 different external hard drives, some that are set up in RAID where they're backing up one another. And it's important to save those sessions. So I wanted to talk about the vocal production, one, because I can show it to you, and two, it demonstrates a technique that's kind of something I haven't done a ton of. But you may have noticed I've played guitar on this channel a lot, played some keys, talked a lot about music theory, done some sound design, but something I haven't done is sing. And that's because I am a terrible, terrible singer. My dad would literally laugh when he would hear me attempt to sing. Perhaps it's some sort of issue in my sinuses or something. But anyway, luckily, I'm in the 21st century. I have all these studio tools, and with these tools, we can do a lot to make a vocal not sound terrible. Now, ultimately, the vocal that you're hearing is Preston Dill. He's been featured on a lot of my songs. He has an awesome band called the Lords of the Satellite, but he came in and sang it. But originally, I wrote all the words, and I came up with the melody. So originally, my voice sounded like this. Be prepared for how terrible this is going to sound. But I first got the lyrics written, and then I did my best to do it in time. It sounded like this. Time seems to slip away. It runs its course and is never here to stay. I know it's awful, but and you'll surely miss friends and places with the power of bliss. All right, cool. So the first thing I did was I cut out the lows with an EQ. I then turned on some Autotune, super helpful. I put it to E minor. That's the key that we're in. I had it followed as closely, as fast as possible with the classic Autotune sound. That made it sound like this. Time seems to slip away. It runs its course and is never. Then I put it through little altar boy. But stay safe and you'll surely miss. To push up the formats. All right. Then this is where the magic really happened. I put it into Melodyne, and I completely wrote in a melody in essence. Melodyne is made by Solemnity, and it's a really amazing custom tuning tool. You can use it on instruments, on vocals, and if you have the full version, you can actually work on harmonies, polyphonic textures, so more than one note at a time. I basically just moved these notes in to where I wanted them, and that sounded like this. Time seems to slip away. It runs its course and is never here to stay. But stay safe and you'll surely miss. All right, so I put it up an octave so that I could better hear the notes, and I wrote that melody in, and then I had Preston over to the studio, and he really, like, on first try got this vocal. This doesn't have any effects on it, but you'll notice that a singer is obviously, like, you can't really fake the quality of a great singer. You can do a lot to make something that sounds sort of robotic or very digital with all these plugins, but nothing like having a real singer. But if you're a songwriter out there, you like writing lyrics and you're not a singer, or perhaps you are self-conscious, you don't like your voice a lot, you can record it on your own on a simple DAW like this, or Ableton, or Fruity Loops, and you can use pitch shifting plugins to get your vocals into a place that's close enough for you to show a singer. And so here's what Preston did after hearing my pretty crazy robotic sounding Melodyned Franken vocal. Here he is.
Time seems to slip away. It runs its course and it's never here to stay. Stay safe and you'll surely miss friends in places with the power of bliss.
All right. So from that, I did what's called a comped vocal. I took, that was 2 different layers. I chopped them up. I added fades. I put them together and I got this main vocal. Now, the vocal chain that you're hearing has 4 plugins, pretty simple. It's going into the EQ. Again, I'm cutting out the lows. I'm cutting everything below 250 hertz out. With vocals, it'll typically be between like 225 and 350. There's a great Waves vocal plug-in sort of video where they reference Pharrell and talk about how he has his vocals cut off like at 330 or 350, which is pretty high. But so I'm cutting it off at 250 hertz. I'm then going into the UAD version of the LA2A Legacy. I'm doing some pretty straightforward compression and gain. Both are set around 40, 42. Then I'm going into CLA Vocals. CLA Vocals is something I've used a lot. It's basically a bunch of plugins all in one, made by Waves. Chris Lordalgi is a incredibly accomplished mixing engineer that if you're around recording, you should definitely know who he is. The bass is going through his subsetting. It's neutral. I'm adding some bite in the treble. Compression's pretty neutral with the push setting. Got a little bit of tight reverb, a little bit of slap delay, and I'm using some stereo pitch. That's taking this vocal from a mono signal and putting it into a stereo signal. Then I'm going into the UAD version of this Pultec EQP 1A, and I'm doing that to basically boost 5,000 hertz. Bandwidth is a little sharp and attenuating it at 100 hertz, which again, we cut off everything below, so that's not doing too much. So that all of those effects sound like this on the vocal.
Time seems to slip away. It runs its course and it's never here to stay.
All right, so that's my clean vocal. I liked that a lot, but I wanted to create something that gave it a lot more character, and this is another reason I wanted to do this video. So this is a really common technique. I'm doing it a lot, not just in music for my artist alias, but when I'm working for artists. You can do a lot by creating parallel processing. So take the same vocal and send it through a different group of effects. You can do something really dirty, like lots of distortion, and then blend it in. So this one is doing some reamping. We'll just hear this on its own. So the plugin chain is similar. We're going from the EQ into that same LA2A. Then we're going into a guitar amp using a default or a stock amp emulator from Logic, best of both worlds, stock setting as well. Going into CLA vocals, into that Pultec, very similar, in fact, the same settings as before. So I basically duplicated the previous chain I just showed you and then added stuff to it. And at the end of the chain, I'm using this Little Altar Boy by Sound Toys. This is a really, really cool plugin. Sound Toys does all sorts of amazing sales. You can get this for like $25 if you watch when they're doing those promotions. I'm basically moving the format down by 1.1 semitones. We're in transpose mode. We're adding some gain, and the dry wet knob is down quite a bit, so this is creating like a harmony in of itself, blending. That vocal altogether sounds like this.
Time seems to slip away. It runs its course and it's never here to stay. It stays.
Now I liked that a lot because for like when he sings it runs its course, we brought out a lot more sort of growl to the vocal, and then together it sounds like bigger than either of them on their own.
Time seems to slip away. It runs its course and it's never here to stay. But stay safe and you're surely met.
So yeah, again, it's really the blending of the two. If you have a hook section and you're working on, let's say, a rap song, like a song with vocals where somebody's rapping, you could take the hook and duplicate it and then put that channel down an octave so it's really low. You could then play with the EQ, filtering that out, and where it is in the mix. And you'll notice that you can lower it so much that you don't even notice it really, but it adds so much to the vocal. So I'll play this whole vocal section one more time into this first drop section. I hope you enjoyed this. If this was helpful, you'd help me out a ton by subscribing to the channel. And once again, pretty bye-bye, Preston and I would all appreciate if you wanted to go check this out on streaming platforms. So here is the hook section for Power of Bliss.
Time seems to slip away. It runs its course and it's never here to stay. But stay safe and you're surely missed. Friends and places with the power of bliss.
Cool. So hopefully you enjoyed that. If you did, again, you'd help us out by subscribing to the channel and checking that out on streaming platforms. Remember to save your files on external drives or things other than your main computer drive. So hopefully you don't lose a session like our great Pretty Bye Bye from Luxembourg did. But anyway, hopefully you learned a little bit about how you could use your voice, even if it's not a great voice, to create ideas, use plugins to make them more palatable so we can hear them, and then you can show them to singers. They can get an idea as to what you had in mind, and then they can do what they do best, and that is sing. So once again, my name's Andrew. I will see you next time. Have a wonderful time making music and be kind to your fellow human being. Cheers.